Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes, and I'm here to talk to you about astrology, Vedic astrology in particular, and what it means to you over the coming week. Hi. I'm going to check something. Make sure. I did what I wanted to do. Let's see now. My name is Gary Gomes. I can be reached at 508-525-0001 or at GaryGomesShe@gmail.com or at neibas@comcast.net. I'm a Vedic astrologer of some 30 plus years experience working out of New Bedford, Massachusetts. And I've been doing these broadcasts for the past few years. This is done in collaboration with Greater New Bedford Cable Access, and also I have a channel on YouTube, and I present these predictive astrology events so that you can get an idea of what's coming up, what planetary combinations are coming up, what to expect in the world in general, and also what to expect for yourself in terms of a very general reading of your sun, moon, or rising sign. So I've been doing these broadcasts, as I said, for a few years. I've also been a Vedic astrologer since 1990. I've been a practicing Temple of Kriya Yoga Swami since 1995, a Reiki master slightly before that, and I've also been initiated into transcendental meditation and Shaivite Hinduism. I also know some stuff from other traditions like tarot and runes, and also a whole parcel of remedial measures. And I can recommend remedial measures either done by myself or done by qualified Vedic pundits, which can help you in your chart. Indian astrology is kind of interesting because there's a lot of literature on remedial measures. There's a ton of it. And that usually means the person can alter somewhat his or her destiny. They can adjust it, or they can ameliorate it, or fine tune it a bit. They can also do it through a variety of other techniques like affirmations, behavioral change, which is consistent with Western astrology. But the Indian astrology does allow for a certain amount of what I would call spiritual help in terms of guiding your life. And to be honest with you, I mean, you can take the approach that you're here to fulfill the karma in the chart. That is the actions that are shown as coming about in the chart. There's also another school of thought which indicates that really coming here and being on this earth at this particular time allows you to modify, to a certain extent, your destiny, to allow you to take some control and some course of action to ease or manage your destiny. So let's say if we never do anything like that, let's say I'm born into a family and neither of my parents or my family are any good at math. So I should just give up any hope of ever becoming good at math. If I apply myself and study, I can become good at math. So I think one of the things that people confuse is what's listed as being the latent potential in the chart, and also the difference in life that can be made if actual effort is made to change certain things in the chart. So you do have choices. You do have a choice as to whether or not to study tonight or drink in a bar. You do have a choice as to whether or not to have an affair or remain faithful to your husband or wife. These things are not, they're not etched in stone. They're not something which is a mandate because you have the potential. Likewise, if you have certain weak planets in your chart, let's say if you don't have a proclivity for, to use the example, a proclivity for things like mathematics or music, it doesn't mean that you can never study or try to appreciate those things, because you can always learn a little bit. And if you learn a little bit, if you're interested in them, this is not, I'm not forcing you to undergo a bunch of things you're not really interested in doing. But let's say you're interested in something like that, and somebody says to you, oh, you've never had a talent for that. Well, you can develop some talent in it. You may not be the best at it, but some people actually, everybody starts off badly. Everybody starts off poorly. Everybody learns to a certain extent from making a lot of mistakes. That's how we learn. If we get everything right the first time around, basically we haven't learned anything. Okay, we're just essentially exercising our natural talents or our natural abilities, and we're really not developing anything new. So that's something to think about. And the rituals or the gemstones that are part of Vedic astrology are a way of giving us assistance to help ameliorate some of the weaknesses or flaws that we bring into this world. There's still effort required. It doesn't mean that we all of a sudden stop working for things, but like, let's say if you get, oh gosh, let's say if you're playing baseball and you have no catcher's mitt or you have no glove, baseball becomes a heck of a lot easier if you have an actual glove in your hand, right? So I think these are probably lousy analogies for most people, but I think one of the things to keep in mind is that, number one, it's not cheating to get tools you need. Number two, if there is no effort applied, you can progress through the world on the path of least resistance, and not and really enter no differently than you left. And that's entirely up to you. It's an individual decision. But usually progress is made much more rapidly if you try and apply yourself. Okay. So some things we may try and we may never get good at, but that also teaches discipline. That also teaches the person the ability to stick to a task and try to accomplish a task. And that's a valuable skill in and of itself. Okay, so, all right, so I'll get less preachy now. I'm going to pull up a chart so we can look at the where the skies are look like this week. And let's see now. Also, I did want to say, if you like what I'm doing, or even if you don't like it, or you think it could use some improvement, please like, subscribe, give me some of your ideas as to what you'd like to see me do. And I did a discussion on Bitcoin a few weeks ago, which actually increased my audience a great deal. And actually, it turned out that basically, I don't trust Bitcoin. Just from a personal perspective, just because I see a lot of parallels between that and the internet boom in the 1990s. It doesn't mean that Bitcoin will go away permanently, but it is a little bit dangerous, especially for any new market is inherently risky. And I think, so anything you have which has a new scope or a new profile, basically it's untested, will have a certain degree of risk in it. So let me just see if I can share the screen. I'm going to share it twice because that usually works best. I'm going to stop and share it again. So we are working towards a book. The school has essentially, as far as I'm concerned, already opened. I am also currently an instructor at Dyer Academy, Kepler College, and the American College of Vedic Astrology. I still intend to be associated with those schools, but you will see me focusing more time on developing my own materials and my own classroom activities. I did work a lot with the American College of Vedic Astrology. I was the president of the Council of Vedic Astrology and vice president before that. And I think it's sort of time for me to, basically to go solo, if you catch my drift. But a book is in the works. I've been making slow progress on it. I'll be able to make much faster progress on it in July. Also, I am planning to open a music channel with more slick production values than this, and the Vedic Astrology channel will also be much nicer looking than the current format is. So again, there are a lot of interesting things to look forward to. So let's look at this chart. This is a chart for New Bedford, Mass. And that's where I'm located. That's why I'm using this particular channel. And it's interesting because we're about to undergo a kind of an interesting transformation. So we have Jupiter and Mars about to be conjunct without Venus's accompaniment. Now, one thing I noticed, especially with COVID, is that Jupiter and Mars conjunctions tend to spread COVID a little bit more aggressively than other conjunctions do. So this is sort of like keeping in accordance with some of the timing that I told you about last a few months ago, and then we'll probably see a spread over the summer months. More likely the summer months than the fall, okay? Because we have this Mars will be in the sign for about 2 months, and it'll be involved with Jupiter, and I think you'll see actually a spread, let's say like the last and final wave of COVID. And essentially it'll still be around. Viruses don't just disappear, but it'll become basically like a kind of a flu infection. I don't think you're going to see all these wacky variants. Also, Venus is right now at its maximum, the maximum exaltation at which it can be placed. So this is Friday. I'm talking to you Friday night. On this is May 20th, and we have Rahu in. I'm going to refresh the screen again because I just noticed we have a K2 in the first house, so that can confuse things. And so we have this is a Libra rising chart. Moon is in Capricorn, so that means for a lot of people there'll be a lot of focus on career matters. It's a little bit better than it could be for Libra, because essentially K2 is in the first house. That gives it, that actually gives K2 a little bit of flair, a little bit of flavor, but it can make Libras and Libra suns susceptible to illnesses. And same with Aries and Aries suns, but Aries will do a little bit better than the Libra will. The other thing is, we have Yamagansaka in the first house, which is very nice. It makes the sign very, very optimistic. K2 in the first house is actually not a bad placement. So this sign is very intuitive. It's very in touch with nature. It'll give a little bit of strain on relationships just in general, because K2 is a sign of relationships. It also is what's causing a bit of a drag on the stock market right now, especially because Mars is aspecting Libra right now. So you see Mars is over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's kind of amping up people to be a little bit angry in relationships, or to be a little bit erratic in relationships. Just keep that in mind the next time you're dealing with a relationship partner, especially over the next, especially in the early part of the week or in the middle part of the week, because the moon will be going right over Mars, the sign in which Mars is placed. Also, over here, Mars is aspecting in the ninth house, so it'll make bosses a little bit more difficult to please. Saturn is aspecting the seventh house, so it'll make relationship partners a little bit difficult to please, or a little bit unhappy with you. And this will also be true in terms of alliances or affiliations around the world. So the United States is not a Libra country, but a lot of this has to do with trade. A lot of Libra has to do with trade. So the stock market's essentially going, it's going in this very, very erratic pattern. Markets around the world are going in this very erratic pattern. And I read somebody today saying that markets will never return to what they were. Well, never is a long, long time. So essentially, our distribution, their supply chains will never return to what they were. I think in about a year and a half, you'll see them return to what they were before. I don't think this is a long-term problem. I think it's a K2 problem. And that's what's causing a lot of the confusion about how things are put together, how things are made. Also, Rahu in the seventh house will make world leaders rather twitchy. Again, as I told you several times before, politicians around the world are very, very concerned about holding on to their positions. So they'll try to induce more fear or more anxiety in the world. It's not a tough thing to do, the world overall, the United States, but basically all parts of the world have been through a grinder over the past couple of years. So essentially, it's not really tough to evoke fear, but there is a certain point at which people will get a little bit exhausted by it. The potential danger of this K2 in Libra, though, is that it'll cause food shortages. With Jupiter in the sixth house of this chart, it's not unlikely. Venus is the distributor of food. It'll be in the same sign with Rahu over the next month. So over the next, as a matter of fact, starting in around 2 days from now, around the 22nd, 23rd, and it'll make people overly interested in physical. Trying to think of a good way to say it so it won't come across as provocative. But people will become a little bit more concerned with mating than with other things. And also, again, like I said, just be really careful about relationship choices over the next month and a half. Venus is going to be in the same sign as Rahu. It'll produce a lot of opportunities for bad relationship decisions. It'll introduce opportunities to cheat. It'll introduce opportunities to get dissatisfied or walk out of long-term relationships. So just be a little bit careful in terms of, and you'll also find people getting very, very demanding with this particular transit, this particular combination. I'm just checking the time, excuse me. The sun is really strong in this chart. It's in the 8th house, I realize, but it's also, it will also give financial gains. So you'll actually see markets start to tick up after June 2nd, I think. And especially after Mercury goes direct. And I think also from this chart, there's a lot of emphasis on home, on disruptive elements at home. So as I've spoken to you before, I am very concerned about a lot of governments being attacked. I mean, both literally and really, literally and figuratively. Sorry about that. And what I mean by that is you'll see actual redirecting of politics away from more towards more, not really traditional, towards more classically free directions. But you'll also see a ton of scandals in politics, a ton of misrepresented news activities coming forward over the next couple of months. This will be true not only of the mainstream media, but of the conservative or the what some people are calling the legacy media, and also the more conservatively oriented media in this country and pretty much around the world. So it'll be fascinating to watch this, because Saturn and Aquarius, from what I've seen, Saturn and Aquarius doesn't really care which side it's on. It really cares more about the truth and more about serving people, more about serving the population. Saturn is not going to stay in Aquarius very long. It'll stay in that sign for the next, after January 2023, and that'll make it more productive of actually introducing reforms that'll help people. So I think it'll be interesting for us to sit through these times and see, and actually see reforms which seem to be more populist oriented. And by populist, I don't mean fascist. By populist, I mean being designed with the interests of the people in mind. And also seeing, to a certain extent, a lot of elites, not just conservative elites, under attack over the next year and a half. So this is, now again, these disruptions don't last forever, but there's a good sign these disruptions will last, at least in the United States, for about another 9 or 10 years. And the reason I'm saying that is because of the major planetary period the United States is in. So we're not going to calm down anytime soon. It's really, this is sort of like a long-term change in the society. And those things don't happen overnight. They'll happen slowly but surely, and you'll also see resistance because Saturn is blocking a lot of the change right now, as well as encouraging the voice of poor people, but it's also blocking or making the change slow. And Jupiter, if it's strong, will do the same thing as well. I think you'll see a lot of rapid change next year when Jupiter is in Aries. But again, like I said, if it's rapid, it isn't long lasting. It'll be short. It'll be quick overturns of people in authority, not long lasting. So there'll be a chance a year after that, when Jupiter enters Taurus, you'll see the same old again. But with Saturn aspecting Aries, I think you'll see some permanent changes happening. Now, getting back to the overall map, so let's look at some potential for disease, some potential for government disruptions over the next, and especially in the arts, and especially among the wealthy over the next 2 months, and also more changes and more shame. It really is essentially connected with the media. The other thing is, so you will see a lot more people worried about what's happening to the common person, to the common citizen in the countries. And you'll also see the common citizen actually start to protest, depending on how bad the situation is, maybe even violently. And I'm not encouraging this, by the way. I'm just essentially indicating what the astrology map shows. A large part of me doesn't want this to happen because basically those things cause a lot of breaks in service and interruptions in service for some of the good things that are being done. So while I like the idea of social justice and fairness to all people, and also the idea that people have a right to make self-determination. I'm also aware that we have people who are at loggerheads right now, so that could be potentially inflammatory or potentially violent. And I'm not looking forward to that, especially about 2 months from now when Mars passes into Aries. But in the immediate future, we do have this poor market performance over the next week, maybe 2 weeks, and also this scarcity of supply lasting for a while. So let's look and see what the world map looks like. But again, like I said, it's not going to be quite as bad as people think it's going to be. We are tilted towards a recession, probably in July. And let's see where over the next week or so things are going to hit the most strongly. So right now we have Mars, Jupiter conjunct. Let's start reading from left to right. We have Rahu conjoined with the moon, and this is really in Alaska and the tip of Russia, so it's really not interacting with very much out here. However, there is some scarcity close to Hawaii, maybe extraordinarily strong governmental control around that area, and maybe even some disease hitting Hawaii, unfortunately. Venus is passing up through Arizona and through the central states, Nebraska, and I think, and Wyoming. And I think what you're going to see is that part of the country is going to have more rainfall than usual, and also, at least from the chart, more conflicts over possessions than normal. So you'll see a lot of people wanting more freedom, more independence, more ability to make money, and being frustrated. The other line is passing through right here is a moon line. The moon is in Capricorn right now, so this will make this part of the world very conservative. It'll also actually, this is around Wisconsin, down through Louisiana, and a little bit into Michigan, and it'll make that part of the world. So essentially it's between Moon and Saturn. It'll sort of disgrace a lot of local governments in this part of the world, or they'll feel kind of oppressed or kind of down. So this is an area where we'll see economic consequences first, this part of the country. Also in Central America, and also heading up really through Panama, and maybe even some panic in Panama and northern South America, okay, over this part of the world, and maybe even into places like Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. and Cuba. Um, the other parts of the world that are hit kind of strongly by um, change in social structure are the southwest hump of Africa near Gabon, and over here near Italy and Western Europe. So you'll see a lot of change, a lot of transition in that part of the world, and all the way over into Ukraine and, excuse me, Poland, then into Ukraine. The other parts of the world that are likely to have some panic or some um, problems with scandals in government are France, England, Germany, and also some financial downturns in Italy and into Greece. Slight interaction with Bulgaria and uh, the Eastern European states, and a little bit with, and I think I said a little bit with Turkey, some slight economic downturn in Turkey. Over here, we have a Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Iran and going up through Ukraine and into Russia a little bit. So this will give a disease spread um, combination in this part of the world. And over here you have Venus running down through Iran, and this Venus conjunction will give a little bit of panic over money, financial status, and again also some political scandal. And as we go over to um, the moon and Rahu, you'll see some political panic in Bangladesh and northeast India. The other part that shows some potential for panic is, and governmental scandal is, so governmental scandal will occur in China, and you'll even see changes of governments in Bangladesh and maybe in parts of India. The other parts which look like they have some possible changes in governments will be around Cambodia and Vietnam. And China is kind of down right now because China is really sort of under lock and key right now. And that Saturn line is going to move really strongly for a while. You'll see some potential for conflict between Korea and Korea, and also Japan will be involved in it some way, shape, or form. But again, I'm not really looking at all out war breaking out. I'm looking more at it in terms of potential for engagement or argument. And we have a Mars-Jupiter line over Japan, so we could see another outbreak of COVID in Japan and Central Australia. But again, these aren't quite as nasty as the earlier strains, so I wouldn't be particularly, at least astrologically, they don't look as nasty. Some potential flooding in Western Japan, in Eastern Japan, and in New Guinea, and also in Eastern Australia. New Zealand is left alone, although there may be some popular unrest in New Zealand, but not a great deal. And there's a Venus line going through here, so he's talking about that in terms of flooding, in terms of possible financial problems. So to summarize, the areas I'm most concerned about are Hawaii, which is kind of isolated, the central United States, essentially from roughly from Nebraska to Ohio to Pennsylvania, and also through to New England and the East Coast, and governmental scandals in Puerto Rico, Cuba, and let's see now. I didn't talk about this, some spread of disease in Brazil again. In Europe, economic problems show up in this belt right here, and political scandals show up in New England, France, and Germany, and also Sweden. And let's see now. Africa will have a COVID outbreak, so Eastern Europe. And finally, you'll see some government disruption around India, Bangladesh, and possibly Pakistan, and also in China, believe it or not, and some economic downturns in China and Southeast Asia. Some disease vectors look like they're showing up in RNA fancy disease vectors in Japan and Eastern Russia, and some changes in government or some governmental scandals in out in New Zealand, but also some potential for heavy rainfall and also monetary crisis in Japan and Eastern Australia. So let's go back and see how the map is affecting you individually as a person. So we're going to close this down, and we're going to stop sharing and start sharing again. Yeah, so if there's anything you'd like me to cover, I'll spend more time on remedies in subsequent weeks, and maybe we'll put out separate broadcasts on that. But that's a particular area of interest to me. I actually hope to become more proficient in that over the next few months and years. And so keep tuned. We're going to be talking about that a lot more, and I might even go to live broadcasts to discuss things like that. All right. So, but again, recognizing that the gemstone cures are very expensive. I don't recommend a lot of gemstones. There are other things you can do, like little rituals you can do, which are good for propitiating bad elements in the chart. So those are the ones I like the most. They're more they're accessible. Some don't even involve Sanskrit mantras, and one of the reasons I'm happy to I don't want to avoid Sanskrit mantras, but basically a lot of people get very anxious about whether or not you're saying the words properly, and for good reason. There's a certain Sanskrit as a language is considered to be a sacred language, and sacred languages have a certain power to them in the way they're pronounced. And Sanskrit, this is particularly true. So let me get back to the chart. But again, I'm going to give you my own take on it. I think the potential for a mispronounced mantra having a bad effect is very overstated. It's the worst it'll do is be ineffective. That's pretty much the worst it'll do. But I don't want to dishonor the tradition, and I'll just say, if we don't know what we're doing, we don't do it. All right. So Aries is, for Aries, again, a lot of ambition, a lot of eagerness for success. Some feeling like they've been swimming upstream over here over the past few months, but they'll start within about 2 months' time. They'll start to see like real bona fide success patterns, and even more so in relationship life over the next month or so. Now, keep in mind, this will be relatively brief. It'll be about a month's time where all their relationship ambitions will seem to come true. But they'll also have more money coming in. They'll also have sort of a detachment from relationship, which will be healthy for them. And they'll also assume more fame, more recognition in their career life. So that's actually good. But more expenditures connected with relationship life. For Taurus, Taurus has Sun in the first house. So it's going to be very focused on home life, on status. The Lord of the second house is in the first. They'll be very focused on money, but they'll, again, like Aries, they'll feel like their rewards aren't coming. So they'll put a lot of effort through, and then all of a sudden they'll be told at the last minute, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something else. So that'll be a little bit frustrating for you, but that'll only last for about another week or so. And then the money will start to flow in. The other thing is, at least kind of Rahu and Mercury will be really close together around before Mercury turns direct. So again, there may be a temptation to overextend oneself or even to engage in brief flings with younger people. So just be mindful of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Some health issues for Taurus. Again, not major ones, but some health issues for Taurus. Change of luck in career and financial gains, but also spending a lot. Gemini has Rahu in the 11th house. It'll acquire a lot of famous friends. It'll gain a lot of recognition. It'll gain a lot of its goals. Rahu in the 11th is considered good for gaining goals or fulfilling goals or ambitions. The Lord of the first house in the 12th house, so there'll be a lot of focus on foreign travel, on interest in foreign countries. And they may have to give up some element of status in order to achieve another element of status. Also very ambitious sign. Some of the ambitions will involve traveling to other places or being recognized in other places. The 10th house is very strong for this chart right now. It's putting a lot of energy into going out, doing things, being athletic, being forceful in its presentation. Ketu's in the 5th house, some problems with children. Children will seem a little bit detached or not interested, but also more physically inclined. Moon is in the 8th house, so there'll be a lot of this sign will seem much more attractive than it normally does, although it's not an unattractive sign. And Saturn's in the 9th house, so luck will be slow but steady. It'll feel like it takes forever to get things done, but it'll last. For Cancer, Cancer has the moon in the 7th house. This could indicate a change in relationship life or relationship patterns, maybe new relationship partners coming in, or new potential relationship partners coming in. Good chart for gain of money and status in career, because the sun is the lord of the 2nd house in the 11th house. So they'll actually increase their public recognition. Mercury is the lord of the 3rd house. It's in the 11th house. So new gain of friends, new gain of status, especially true after June 2nd, excuse me. Ketu's in the 4th house, not quite so interested in being home as much as in being out and seen and visible. This sign does have to be a little careful, though, that there may be health problems connected with family members, especially mothers. But this is not really a dangerous chart for the health of the person's mother. The 5th house lord is Mars, is placed in the 9th house, which is an excellent placement. So this will actually give increased status in life, fulfillment of goals and ambitions, just a lot of increase for this particular chart. Rahu's in the 10th house, a lot of career activity. Saturn's in the 8th house. The person will have to research a lot to get their fame, but there'll also be this strong element of recognition the person will encounter. And so, yeah, it looks like a good week for Cancer. For Leo, Leo's Lord is in the 10th house, so this chart will be really strongly focused on career. Relationship life, there'll be stable relationship life, not really a lot of happiness in relationship, not really a lot of joy in relationship, but it'll be steady, and relationship partners will want to do their own thing or do their own activity. Saturn aspects Rahu, so bosses will be tough, very difficult to please, despite the fact that you'll be earning money. And K2 in the 3rd, a certain amount of fearlessness that comes from that combination. If K2 is in the 3rd house, the sign is much more prone to take risks. Excuse me. And you'll see a lot of that happening this month. Moon is in the 6th house. This will give some problems with public image, though. So even though the person will actually be getting a great deal of recognition, they'll encounter enemies, especially among women. And 9th house, Venus, Mars, Jupiter in the 9th house, a lot of luck, a lot of career growth for this particular sign, a lot of travel for this particular sign. For Virgo, you have Venus, Mars, and Jupiter in the 7th house. So even though there'll be a lot of interest relationship-wise, and a lot of opportunities relationship-wise, they'll seem to be laced with confrontation or laced with antagonism. So you'll have relationship opportunities, but they'll seem to be very, very tough to put together, and there'll be more fights than you really like in relationship matters. This is true in business matters too. For K2 in the 2nd house, this sign is going to be very misunderstood over the next year and a half, unfortunately. Moon's in the 5th house. Very good for musical advancement, very good for any kind of career advancement and financial gain for this chart. And Saturn's in the 6th house, ability to overcome enemies through patience. 7th house, we've already spoken about that. It's really, like I said, it's really fascinating because it'll give a lot of opportunities to the sign, but they won't be without struggles. Rahu is in the 8th house, a lot of fascination with occult or metaphysical subjects, maybe some subjects which are not too, are kind of offbeat. And 9th house has Sun in it. That's very good for luck for this sign. It'll give good financial gains. It'll also give the ability to travel. And Mercury, Lord of the 10th, is in the 9th house, moving backwards. It'll feel like career-wise you're moving backwards, but after June 2nd, you'll see that's not the case. For Libra rising, Libra has Rahu in the 7th house. So this will give, it'll make the sign a little bit temperamental, a little bit independent, which is probably good for Libra, but it'll also encounter a lot of dissatisfaction and enemy status from relationship partners. So really this sign will be more tempted to stray than a lot of other signs will, especially because it'll be kind of an adversarial relationship with a relationship partner. A relationship partner will be very, very geared towards telling this individual what to do. Career-wise, actually not a bad placement. The moon is in the 4th house, so it indicates a career from home. Saturn is in the 5th house, so again, slow gain anything that's done slowly will last longer for this chart, especially over the next couple of years. And that Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter in the sixth house, some minor problems with illnesses, which should pass within a couple of days. And Sun and Mercury in the eighth house, good for underground activity or activity outside of normal or conventional interests, so like occult activities or metaphysical or spiritual or research-based activities will be very beneficial for this sign. For Scorpio, Scorpio has no planets in the first. The Lord of the first house is in the fifth house. It'll do very well in terms of romantic life. Again, it'll be kind of fiery relationships. But there'll actually be a lot of intensity connected with the sign's relationship life. So they may actually end up with renewing the passion in their romance, but also they'll be very changeable this month. They'll find their desires to be very, very erratic. The other thing to keep in mind with Scorpio is going to act like Mars, and Mars is going to be in this fifth house for a good 2 months. So these are essentially lucky months for Scorpio rising. A lot of spiritual activity is indicated from this chart. Some minor health issues are indicated, or risk of health issues are indicated over the next year, though. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius' Lord is in the fourth house in what's called Ahamsa Yoga. It's a very good yoga. And for this sign also, Venus is in what's called the Malavya Yoga. So the attributes of Venus and Jupiter are magnified greatly in this chart. And you'll start to see this sign actually pushing ahead, actually developing some new goals and some new ambitions, and with a lot of support from home, although with some minor fighting. And Rahu's in the fifth house. The fighting will also be connected with children. Sun and Mercury in the sixth house is some ability to get some gains from the government, but not without some effort. And luck will increase a lot for the sign over the next few weeks. Ketu in the 11th house usually gives either strange friends or a lack of friend support. So I think one of the things you'll see is this sign will be actually becoming, even though it's got all the support from home, it'll become a little bit more solitary. For Capricorn has the Lord of the first house, so it's Lord of the seventh house in the first house. So we'll be thinking a lot about relationships. Saturn's in the second house, a lot of focus on money, which is not unusual for the sign. And Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, a lot of skill in dealing with arguments and any kind of relationships. Rahu is in the fourth house, so there'll be some controversy at home, or home will seem very unsatisfactory. Children will do well, though. And although they'll have some problems and also be dealing with some hidden issues, children will do relatively well. Sixth house Lord in the fifth house is where there's some illnesses connected with kids. Seventh house Lord is in the first house. We already spoke about that. There's a lot of focus on relationships and maybe changing relationship life for the better. And Ketu's in the 10th, so again, not a lot of career recognition, but again, for this sign, that doesn't matter so much as it's making money. For Aquarius, Saturn's in what's called a Sasha Yoga in the first house. That means essentially Saturn's very strong for this particular planet. It gives a lot of focus on the past, also focus on new and innovative procedures. Is the moon's in the 12th house. That's a good combination because it puts enemies in the 12th house, so you'll lose your enemies. Mars, Venus, and Jupiter in the second house, very good for accumulating money. Rahu's in the third. This sign will be very ambitious over the next year and a half. You'll see it go very, very far. I'm convinced over the next year and a half if it stays the course and focuses its direction. There's a tendency when Rahu's in the third to try to take on too many tasks. So I think that's really the only warning I have for this sign this particular week. Sun and Mercury are in the fourth house. That's actually considered to be good for the fourth house. It gives good relationship partners, good luck with children. Moon in the 12th house, we already said, is good. And Ketu's in the 9th house. So bosses will seem to be abandoning you or taking off. That'll actually give you a lot of freedom. Finally, when we get to Pisces, it has these two great personality yogas, the Malavya and the Hamsa yoga in the first house. Aquarius had what's called the Sasha yoga, which is a yoga for authority or for bossing people around. But it's also a yoga for service, a combination for service. Getting back to Pisces, Venus and Mars and Jupiter, a good combination is what's called a Raj Yoga combination in a Vedic chart because Jupiter and Mars are together. So this was good for money, good for fulfillment of ambitions, good for overall help from other people's money, and good for support from bosses and good for career life. So there's not much wrong with this chart for Pisces. The only thing that's a little bit damaging is Rahu's in the second house, so it may overindulge. Sun is in the third house, so it gives a lot of sense of purpose to the sign. And Moon is in the 11th house, that gives a lot of financial gain. So this is a good week for Pisces. Now, in terms of remedies, what you want to do for Rahu to avoid the temptations that Rahu can cause is a very simple mantra like Om Dum Durgaya Namaha or Om Rahuve Namaha are both good mantras to chant. Try to chant them at least 11 times a day, or else you can chant them mentally to yourself. You don't have to chant them out loud. And I think the other planets that I would probably look for strengthening would probably be Venus, because Venus, when it's strong, allows us to think logically and gain control of our senses. So again, we would go Om Dum, Om Durang During Durong Sa Shukraya Namaha, or Om Shukraya Namaha are good mantras to strengthen Venus so that it'll keep you out of temptation. So that's all that I have for this week. Again, try to say that ideally 108 times a day, but saying the mantra 11 times a day is good. All right, so that's about it for this week. I have to go. It's been a pleasure, as always, seeing you. Again, if you haven't already signed up, sign up, share it with your friends. Please like, and I'll see you next week. Namaste, and I love you all. All right, have a great week, folks. Bye-bye now.